Alright guys, welcome back to Batdog Garage. Today's video is going to be part 2 of the sound deadening process of this stereo integrity Audi. Now in the last video, I applied Damplifier Pro to the floor, Heatwave Pro to the floor, and I used something that a lot of people haven't heard of or seen used, and that was the mineral wool. And I had a question regarding the application and the use of that mineral wool. And the question was, if you've got that H-beam, that riser that's there, and you can put Damplifier Pro on the interior skin that you can reach, what's the benefit of stuffing mineral wool inside there? And that benefit is, part of it has to do with sympathetic resonance, and I'll put a link either in the video or in the description, but that's part of it. The big thing is that mineral wool is also a sound absorption material. So if I have a void where I cannot get Damplifier Pro into and I want to treat that area, if I want to absorb sound produced by that exterior panel, if I want to reduce resonance of that exterior panel, I'm going to do everything I can to do that. So if I can't get Damplifier Pro on that panel, I'm going to stuff that void. I'm going to stuff it every time with mineral wool. As I do that, you can tap on that exterior panel and hear a change in the sound of it. And you can actually deaden that panel just by stuffing the void with mineral wool. So then when I come back and I apply Damplifier Pro to what I can access and what I can reach, at that point I've not only got the exterior panel deadened, I've got sound absorption material. Remember, the mineral wool absorbs sound. I've got sound absorption material there, and I've got Damplifier Pro on that in the interior door skin or door panel or body panel, whatever it happens to be. So you'll see as I treat this door, I'll put Damplifier Pro on the outside, I'll put a sound absorption material on that outside skin, and then I'll treat this inner door skin. So in effect, I've treated that seat riser, that H-shaped beam that was here in the floor, the same way I'm going to treat this. The only difference is I have a window track here that moves up and down. I can't pack mineral wool in this door. So I've got to go with other materials and go another route and ensure that everything works the way it should. In areas where there's that exterior door skin and interior door skin, of course I can pack mineral wool in there. So wanted to cover that because it was something that I did and I showed the difference in ringing, but I still had a question on it, and I hope this explanation helped you guys. Now here's something I want to show you guys in relation to the mineral wool usage. This is the A-pillar of the Audi, and from the factory you can see they have foam injected into the empty cavity of this A-pillar. And the reason behind that is as you're driving down the road, you've got all the wind hitting the windshield, whipping around, and this is there. This foam inside here is there to reduce the buffing and the wind noise that you would get as you drive down the road. So same principle, just different material. So I mentioned before that I could tell where deadener had been applied to this exterior door skin based on the sound that I heard as I tapped on it. So I'm going to go around the door, let you guys hear this, and then I'm going to treat the door and we'll come back and listen again. Alright, so that is before treatment. Now let's get started. We're going to do 100% coverage inside here, and we'll come back and test again. Now what I'm doing is there's a crash bar that runs diagonally across the door here, and all I did was feel inside the door to see if there was anything that would obstruct, taking one big sheet of this Damplifier Pro, sliding it in and installing it on the door. What I am going to have to do is trim at an angle to match this crash bar so I can get that in. So all I'm doing is putting this in place, looking and sizing up the angle of this crash bar, and we'll see how close I get. Always a good idea to test this as it has the backing on it. That way you can get it in the vehicle, test fit, and then once you're satisfied with how it fits, you can remove the backing and install it in place. So slide this in, bring it up, and looks like my angle was perfect. So now I'll go ahead and start applying this to that outer door skin. Now that angle I used on the first cut, I can apply to each additional cut that I make and know that my material is going to track that crash bar. And just as before, I'm going to go ahead and get this in the door, check fit, and from that point I can start pulling the backing material off and actually install it to the door. A lot of people will use small individual pieces and try to puzzle it together. I like using big pieces when I can. This car, fortunately, I can use large sheets and get them in. So I'm coming along here and I've got it down on that crash bar, but at this point I also have overlapping material on this door. So I can either let it overlap and go ahead and just have more mass on the door, or I can go ahead and trim it. And I think in this instance I'm going to trim it because I'm going to use all of this sound deadening material, but I don't want to waste it on the door. Even though 100% coverage in the doors, a lot of people will say is a waste. I'm going to use bits and pieces like this that I just trimmed off in other areas. So we will go ahead and get to that later. So at this point I have the exterior door skin treated. So I want to bring it around and let you guys hear from the outside the way it was before. Remember, just a few minutes ago I tapped on the door. So I want to start here, go around like I did before. Now you'll notice the difference between here and here. This sounds empty and hollow. So, well, let's see why that would be. If we come back and we look inside the door, you see this beam up here. And this beam, I cannot treat that entire area. This is, again, another situation like we had over here with the seat riser, the H-beam, where that I could not get inside there. So what I'm going to do is inside this cavity, I'm going to pack mineral wool in there. And I have, I don't know if you guys can see this, there's holes all along here. So I can pack mineral wool inside this empty cavity, and that is going to treat that area. And after that's done, then I'll come in and I'll wrap my Damplifier Pro up over this and we'll be done. So you guys should be able to see the mineral wool that's in here now. You can see it in there. Let me get this right there, there, and you can see it in there. So with the mineral wool there, I'm going to come back around and do this tap test and let you guys hear that again. Now, if you're wondering why I have foam fingers, it's because I'm installing Second Skin's Megazorbe. And Megazorbe is a 1/2 inch thick melamine foam. And it's not just a melamine foam, it's hydrophobic. So that means it will not absorb water. And it's not just hydrophobic on the surface. If you cut it, that cut surface is also hydrophobic, so it's impregnated. This stuff has an adhesive on it that, well, it works. So as you see, I am applying this in smaller pieces. With the Damplifier Pro, I was using large sheets when I could. With the Megazorbe, this melamine foam, it's actually beneficial to cut into smaller pieces and apply it to the door. Now, this Megazorbe works in 2 ways. One way, it is a sound absorption material. Another way is it's a thermal barrier. It's got excellent thermal properties. Now, as far as sound absorption goes, with 1/2 inch of material, you're only going to get X amount of sound absorption depending on frequency. If you stack layers on top of one another and add thickness to it, it gets better. So for this car, it looks like I can run 2 layers of Megazorbe on these front doors. I could probably get away with 3, but I'm going to do 2 layers on these front doors. That's because that's where the mid-bass drivers and the tweeters will be. The mid-bass drivers are the ones that I'm primarily worried about. The tweeter is sealed and they're only playing into the cabin. In the rear doors, I'm going to put 1 layer and that'll be it. I may try to get some on the back side here of this and see if I can absorb some stuff on the back side of this panel. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and get the 2nd layer of this Megazorbe installed, and then we'll address this door skin. Now what I just did was run the window up and down through the track to check clearance for a 3rd layer of Megazorbe. I know I told you guys earlier I was going to go with 2 and stop, but I wanted to go ahead and add the 3rd layer because, as I said, that Megazorbe, the melamine foam, is only going to have X amount of an absorption coefficient at a given frequency. So if I add additional layers, that coefficient increases. So I had 2 layers and I thought that was the limit, but if I can get the 3rd layer, I want to do that. And the reason is this door is going to be our speaker cabinet, our enclosure, and the back wave of this speaker, I want to absorb as much of that as I can so it doesn't cause a null or a cancellation or a dip in the response that we see on the cabin side of the door. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead, treat the entire exterior skin again, and that will give us a 3rd layer of the Megazorbe, and then I'll focus on this interior skin. So I want you guys, whether after the video or pause it now, take a look. I want you to look at the internet, look at YouTube, search car audio sound deadening, search specifically for doors, and look at what people are doing. Why are they all doing it the same way? I saw 1-2 videos out of pretty much everything I watched. They're all doing the same thing. They take one big piece and apply it. So why is that? Now with this drive unit to the window and the accelerometer for the side impact airbag system, I can go ahead and start treating the back side of this door skin. And I've already cleaned the back of it with Windex. You can use denatured alcohol, whatever material you want to use, but I've already got this back side cleaned off. Now what I'm going to do is, remember all those pieces that I cut off? I'm going to take those guys and I'm going to apply them in random locations on the back side of this panel. And the reason I'm only going to do bits and pieces is because this panel is stamped and formed and it has rigidity built into it just because it has been stamped and formed. If you look in a truck bed, the reason the truck bed has those ridges in it is to increase stiffness and rigidity. So instead of having a large flat panel on the outer skin of this door, we have this nice stamped piece on the inside that everything attaches to. Okay, so what I've just done is used masking tape to cover all of the openings on this interior door skin. So at this point, what I want to do is peel all of this off, and I'm going to transfer material that I'm going to use to place here, and one, seal off these openings, and two, add mass to the panel. If you looked, like I said, to go look at other videos and how they treat doors and sound deadening, what you'll find is that the large majority of them will take their Damplifier Pro, their Dynamat, their Hush Mat, whatever brand it is, they will take it and throw it on here and cover the entire panel. And that's great. You can see the logo, but it doesn't give you access to this inside panel. So even though they've treated the entire panel, one, they really don't need to, because this panel has structural integrity built into it because it's stamped and it has contour and shape to it. The big issue with doing that is you don't have access. This hole here gives me access to the door latch mechanism here. It gives me access to the door pull right here, and through here I can get in to this window crank assembly that sends it up and down. I can get to the tracks. You don't have that access if you cover all of this. So anytime it has to go in for maintenance or service, they're just going to rip your shit off, and you're going to have money that you spent on deadening material that is wasted. So at this point, we're going to transfer this to our material we're going to use here and apply it to the car. So this is the material I will be using to create these panels. I don't know if you guys can read that, but it says sheet lead, 1/16 of an inch, 12 inches by 48 inches. So we're going to take this and roll some of it out. And this is what we're going to use with our tape here. This is just some sheet metal shears. You can see how easily this stuff cuts. So we're going to take this guy to the car and go ahead and check, see how that fits. And if it's good, I'll just make a copy for the other side. So I've got my passenger side and driver's side filler panels made for these front doors. And let's weigh these guys and see how much mass we're going to be adding to the interior door skin. Looks like 4 pounds, it's settled at 3.5 ounces. And we're going to go ahead and move over to grams. 1,916 grams added to the interior skin with just the block-off panels per door. So let's get these to the car and install them. Now to attach these block-off plates to the car door, I'm going to be using Rivnuts. And Rivnuts are just a threaded insert that allows you to use a machine screw to install stuff to the door. So there's a few things you're going to need. You're going to need your Rivnuts, you're going to need some drill bits, a Rivnut tool, and I like having a fractional drill gauge here. So what I use this for is I know I need a 9/32 through hole for my Rivnut. So I have a 9/32 bit here. And for my screws, I am going to need I believe this is 13/64. Yes, a 13/64 opening there. So what I can do is lay out my locations where I want each Rivnut on the panel, and then I can mark and drill with a 13/64 and have my pilot hole for where the Rivnut is going to go. And then I just come to the door panel after my pilot hole is drilled, and I drill the 9/32 hole and install the Rivnut. So right now what I'm going to show you is the two Rivnut tools I use and how I use them. So this first tool is an Astro 1442, and I'll put a link in the description. But the way this works is you take your Rivnut and you thread it onto the unit, and as you squeeze the arms of the unit, it will compress, and you guys should be able to see the flange here. So between the outer flange and the face of the Rivnut, what will happen is in the car, it will compress the sheet metal, and between this flange and this one, the sheet metal is compressed in there, and now you have a threaded insert permanently attached to the door that will allow you to run a machine screw in and out instead of having sheet metal screws like what were used in the car previously. Now the other tool is also from Astro, and this is an ADN14, and this is a rivet nut drill adapter kit. And the way this one works is you take your drill and you chuck this piece into the drill. As I tighten the drill, it draws the unit in. As I back it out, you can see it extending. So the way you do this, you take your Rivnut, thread it on. I'm going to go ahead and extend this out a little more. I thread these on until it stops, and then at that point, just as with the other one, you're going to use the drill to tighten instead of using the arms. So I just run it, and you guys will get to see compress here. So you can see it's already started compressing. You can see it flaring out right there. So your sheet metal would be between the forward flange and that part that's compressing. So now if I go ahead and continue tightening, and I've got my clutch set, I should probably, so there you have it. Now to back this off, to remove it, you're just going to reverse the drill, and you can see it extends out, and then with this attached to the door, you just rotate this and it comes right off. So now we're going to go to the car, and I'm going to show you guys installation into the car. Now to install these, you guys can see I've already got 1, 2, 3 of them installed. I'm just going to show you the installation process on this last one. Now to do this, you take your plate, put it in place, trace the perimeter of it. You guys can see the perimeter that's traced here. So what I can do now is look at where I want to put my mounting holes, and when I put the block off plate in place, I can just mark, I want one here, I want one here, and if I come over to this side, I want one over here, and another one down here. So that gets, I'm going to go ahead and drop a 5th one right there. So that gets all of my locations marked on my block off plate. So at that point, what I do is take my drill bit, and I want to go ahead and drill through holes. You guys can't see this, but I've got my trusty block of MDF on the ground. Same thing, same piece I used when I was cutting all of the Damplifier Pro and installing it. I'm just drilling through holes here, and then I can use my Sharpie and I'll mark them on the door. So now I've got my holes drilled and my plate in place. I can just take the Sharpie and mark where each hole is going to go on the door, and then I can come in and drill my other holes for the Rivnuts. So locations marked, we're going to change bit and drill our holes. Now if you're unsure of what you're doing, remember that we are drilling through the interior skin towards the exterior skin of the car. If you are not confident, if you're overconfident, they make drill collars, and basically it's a sleeve that comes over the bit. You tighten a set screw and it clamps down in place, and it does not allow the drill to extend but so far into the piece you're drilling. You can also wrap a lot of tape around and do a drill stop there. What I do is, as I drill, I'll get through the initial cut, and when it actually starts cutting into the sheet metal, I will back off with the pressure, and I will let the tool do the cutting, not relying so much on pressure, but I'll put pressure on, get the cut started, and as the cut actually starts, I back off with the pressure and I just count on the RPM to make the cut. So now I'm going to go, no drill stop, and drill my holes. Okay, so that has all of my holes drilled. Now I am going to take my snap-on tool here and go over each of these locations. Knock down any high spots that will come up, because as you drill through, sometimes you do pull shrapnel, shards of metal through the front side. So I'm going to show you guys now both tools in use. This is the Astro 1442. This is just a lever action Rivnut tool, and I'm going to thread my Rivnut on, put that in place, and then it's just a matter of squeezing and turning this piece right here, which unscrews, and then you have your Rivnut installed. Now, on the drill adapter, same deal. Install your Rivnut. You can back this out. Install the Rivnut, put it in place, and then just like clockwise, and that pulls the Rivnut tight. You back off, and then to unscrew it, you actually turn the unit itself, and your Rivnut's off. So I like using this because machines make it faster, but depending on where you're working, you may or may not be able to use the lever action Rivnut unit, Rivnut tool. But I really like using the drill adapter when I can. Saves time, makes things much simpler. And that's it. We have all of our Rivnuts installed, and then it's just a matter of attaching our plates in place. Now, before we attach the plates in place, I need to apply some close-cell foam to them. And the reason for that is this is lead sheet. So on both sides, I'm going to apply close-cell foam. That way, if anyone handles it in the future, they're touching close-cell foam and not touching the lead. So now I have a piece of Second Skin's Overkill close-cell foam here. Now this Overkill I'm going to use, I'm just going to laminate both sides of these lead sheets with this close-cell foam. And all I'm using is Second Skin's adhesive, contact adhesive they send for this. So all I'm doing is going to spray and get a nice coat here, let that tack up. I'm actually going to spray this piece, let both pieces tack up, and then I'll start covering things. Now I'm going to let that tack up a little bit. If you guys have never sprayed a contact adhesive like Weldwood or whatever, you don't want to just stick it together immediately while it's wet. You actually want it tacky, and it'll stick best when it's tacky. If you look at the directions here, they'll say hold the can 6 to 8 inches, keep the can moving, make bond while the adhesive is aggressively tacky. So not when it's wet, but when it's tacky. So if I feel this, not quite there yet. There we go. Doesn't take too long to get between where it's ready to go. And so there we go. There's one side done. Now I'm going to go ahead and start doing the other pieces. Now it's time to trim each of these pieces, and then once we get them trimmed, I'll flip them over and go ahead and coat the other side with this Overkill. So a lot of these small pieces that you see me picking up here, you may be tempted to throw them away, but you can use small pieces like this at contact points, like where screws or something come in. So all these small scraps, until you're done, just toss them aside, and the bigger pieces anyway, toss them aside. You can likely use them later, and I'll show you that. So now I've got these guys covered, and I'm going to apply another material to the back side of these, and that is the Mega Zorbe that you guys saw earlier. The reason for that is that this Overkill that I use is a closed cell foam, and closed cell foam is great as a decoupling layer. So between two pieces where you don't want hard surface to hard surface contact. That is one of the reasons I'm using it. Another reason I sandwich both sides of it is because this is pieces of lead. So I'm going to put some of this Mega Zorbe, which is an open cell foam, on there. And this is not really the Overkill. Closed cell foam is not really a good sound absorption material. Remember, on the inside of that door, I want to absorb back waves from the speaker. So if I take a look, I've got sound skins here. I've got some Mesa Ultimate Matte, which is just like sound skins. It's 3-layer stuff. And of course, I've got the Overkill closed cell foam. All of these materials, the foam that is on them is not really going to serve a purpose inside the door for sound absorption. And you guys have seen this stuff before: sound skins, the sonic barriers, sound shield. GP has stuff like this, and people will put it inside the doors, and the closed cell foam on here doesn't really do anything. First of all, this is awfully thin. If you look, that's an awfully thin piece of material, and there's not really good sound absorption qualities here. This stuff is best used on the inner door skin, where that it serves as a decoupling layer. And you guys have seen how this 3-layer stuff that has the nice logos printed on them, you guys have seen how this melts. So anymore, I stay away from this. There's a few brands that I do trust: Second Skin, Dynamat, Stinger, Hushmat. I trust all those guys. The 3-layer products are off my list of things that I trust. So I'm going to take a few pieces of this Mega Zorbe, the open cell foam, and apply this. Now, talking about the difference between open cell and closed cell foam, you guys will remember in the past, there was a big deal made about fast rings. And fast rings were rings that you put around your speaker to improve mid-bass response. And the idea is it sends the sound produced by the speaker into the cabin instead of having it leak between the front of the speaker and play into the door. Trick is fast rings were open cell foam. They don't block sound from traveling through the rings. Sound can easily travel through the fast rings. The open cell foam is open as they were. If you really want to get into blocking sound from exiting through the rings, you need to get a closed cell foam ring that's going to project the sound to the door and give you a better seal between the front of your speaker and the back side of your door card. So open cell foam rings, stay away from. If you're going to use anything, use a closed cell ring. So I'm now done with installing those panels. One thing I did that you guys didn't see is I took a strip of this tape that I used when I stuck the Heatwave Pro to the floor, and I ran a strip of it across the top of here, and I just cut a strip of the Overkill. And what that did is it gave me 2 layers of this closed cell foam on the back side of this piece of lead. And what that does, it just gives me a better seal between that strip of lead and the door itself. Other stuff that I've done that you can't see on the back side of this door skin is all of the scrap pieces of Damplifier Pro. I just stuck them in random locations here. Remember, this isn't a large flat piece of metal like that exterior door skin, so you don't need to do 100% coverage. Remember, with 100% coverage, I could still hear where untreated areas were, especially like right across the top where that empty cavity was, and I stuffed the mineral wool in there. With this, it's much different. You can get away with applying small pieces in random locations. You don't need to do 100% coverage. Something else I did, as you guys saw, is I put the Zorbe, that melamine foam, on the back side of these panels. I also cut strips and small squares and put those in random locations on the back of this. So the end result is a very well insulated, very dead door. And not only that, if you look at it, it looks like all I've really done is make some panels here. And these panels, I can remove them and perform maintenance and service on the car. He can take this to Audi and let them perform maintenance and service. They're not going to scratch their heads wondering why there's crap covering the entire door. So that is the end of this video. I'm not 100% done here. I'm still going to reassemble things, and I've got some small details to take care of here, but I'll get into that in the next video. And then we'll actually address the next step in this process, which is the door card itself. So if you guys have questions, comments, if there's something I did here that you don't understand, go ahead and ask. I'll be sure to answer it. I always try to be thorough with these videos and give you guys as much information as I can. I know some of you it's a bit much, but for those of you that can get something out of it, I hope this helps. So I'll see you guys next video.